Hi, and welcome to the Writing a Business Plan webinar. My name is John Baxter. I'm the Business Plan Advisor here at Small Business BC. A little bit about myself. I've been working as in entrepreneurship for about the last 5 years, both in Canada and abroad. I've worked with Small Business BC for about 2 years now, and in that time, I've had the pleasure of going over between 200 and 300 business plans during that time. Today, we're going to be looking at everything about writing a business plan and going through our Small Business BC business plan template. We're going to work on a couple of exercises so you're able to get started writing your plan, sort of get those first steps underway. Since a business plan covers all aspects of the business, we're not going to be able to go into depth in everything in there. So you're going to need more information in certain sections. That's kind of a given. So we're also going to share some other resources that'll be available to you. And I encourage you as you're working through this to look on the Small Business BC website. We've got a variety of resources there that are relevant to all different sections of the business plan. So there's a number of goals for this webinar. First, we really want to figure out what the business plan is. We're going to go over what it's for and all the things that go into the business plan. So all of those sections that you need to look at. We're also going to understand what makes a good business plan, or for that matter, a bad business plan, where to go get help when you're working through it, and also how are you going to start writing? What are going to be those first steps for you? So what is a business plan? The business plan is really what you're going to do with the business. That's going to be described in the business description section. It's also going to tell how you're going to do it. That's going to be discussed in the operations and in the marketing section. There's also going to be the rationale for why this business would work. That's going to be looking at the market research section. And finally, what are the financial outcomes of all of these decisions you're making in the business? And that's going to be covered in the cash flow. So the first question to ask yourself is, why are you writing a business plan? This is determined what the business plan will look like. A lot of you who are looking at this are going to be writing a business plan for the purposes of getting funding for your business, either through a small business loan or finding somebody to invest in the business. Other people, we're going to be writing the business plan for your own purposes, for your own planning, for internal use. For each of those cases, things are going to look a little bit different. Of course, if you're writing it for somebody external, for a funder, things really need to look polished. Everything has to be very clear and written very thoroughly. On the other hand, if you're writing for your own purposes, it's the content that's important. Having that information in there doesn't matter as much if it's point form or if it's not perfectly clear to somebody else outside of the business, if it's just for yourself. But what's going to be the same is the content. And so that's what we're going to be going through. We're going to talk very clearly about the content that goes in there. And then what that finished product looks like of a business plan, that's going to be up to you depending on what you're using it for. So here are the parts of the business plan that we're going to be looking at one by one. And it's a good way to break up the business plan into separate sections so you can really kind of compartmentalize what information needs to go where. The first part of the business plan, and arguably the most important part of the business plan, is the executive summary. It's the most important because it summarizes everything in the entire plan. If you're using the business plan to get funding, often the lender will just read the executive summary before flipping through the cash flow. They'll, of course, read the rest of the business plan to get more detail, but this is really going to be the first part that captures the attention and gives the best idea of what the business is all about. So with the executive summary, you're going to try to go over everything from the body of the business plan, or the most important parts. But what you're not going to do is cut and paste information from the rest of the business plan. The other thing you're not going to do is you're not going to start writing your business plan here. To write the executive summary, you need to have something to summarize. So you're going to write the body of the business plan first, and then you're going to cycle back and write this at the end once you have a draft of the rest of the business plan. That's going to make it a lot easier on you. It's also going to make the executive summary a lot better because you know the business plan in more detail that you're writing about, that you're summarizing. So the first section after the executive summary is the business description section. This is where you're going to start, and it's generally a lot easier of a section to work on. Here's where you're going to describe what you want to do in the business and what you want the business to be. You're going to talk about what you're going to sell, the values of the company and the vision and mission. And you're going to describe why you're the right person to accomplish this, why you're the right person to run this business. You're also going to talk about what you've done so far towards developing this business and give a roadmap for your plans for the future. So the first part of this section is the business overview. This is the initial description of the business. It's the who, where, why, and how of the company. And it acts to provide context to the reader, especially if it's an outside reader like a lender, for the rest of the business plan to come. A good tip is when you've written this, have somebody go over and read your business description and then describe back to you what your company is all about. If they get it right, if you get a good idea or a good understanding of what your business is back from them, then you've written a good business description. If not, then it might be lacking clarity or it might be lacking detail. So here's an example of a bad business description. The example is for a fictional company run by myself called Shine Painting. And it says Shine Painting is a painting company owned and operated by John Baxter. So take a moment now, maybe pause the video and think to yourself, what's missing from this? What other information can be added? The things that are often described as being missing from this is where's the business operating? Or more detail about what the company does. For example, if I say painting company, I don't even know if I'm painting houses or pictures. The size of the company, is it just myself all alone, or is it a large company with lots of crews and teams? And any other important details that are relevant and specific to this business. So here we see a much better business overview. So Shine Painters is a residential painting company owned and operated by John Baxter, concentrating on high-end renovations and new builds. Shine Painters use exclusively environmentally friendly paints that produce no VOCs, eliminating harmful odors associated with interior painting. Based out of Vancouver, BC, we have 2 crews that operate throughout Metro Vancouver, working on both interior and exterior painting. We also offer associated services such as drywall repair, power washing. Shine Painters work with homeowners as well as building contracts to make sure the job is done to perfection. So there you see just a couple of short paragraphs chocked full of lots of information that give a really good picture of this business. It's obviously not everything about the business. That's what we're going to be going over moving forward. However, it provides excellent context to the reader so they have an understanding of the business right from the get-go. The next section is the ownership and management section. This is where you're going to talk all about yourself. Everything here is to show that you're the best person to run this company. So you're going to mention skills, qualifications, and experience that you have that are relevant to running this business. So, for example, if you're starting a restaurant, your passion and experience for cooking is great to mention, but this is not enough. You also need to talk about the business and management side of things. There's more to running a company than just providing that service. There's also every other aspect that goes into running that business. Now, it can be that you don't have every skill needed to run a company. In fact, I would say no entrepreneur has every skill that they need in order to run all aspects of the company themselves. So you might also talk about who else is helping you manage this. Do you have coaches or mentors? Are there other managers that you're employing to work with you? You might also work with external consultants, such as accountants, lawyers, or brokers. Really, what it comes down to is this is the section where you're going to talk about yourself, all your skills, all your abilities, and really brag and show, hey, I'm the right person to be running this business. In the next section, products and services, this is where you're going to talk about what you're selling. It can act as sort of a menu of products or services. This can be a literal menu if you're a restaurant, or it can just be a list of the products that you provide. You can use the old adage of features and benefits to describe what you are selling in your business. So the old saying, features tell, while benefits sell, are really well described with these couple of examples. So first, we've got a simple umbrella. You've got all of these features that you could see on the left, which is it's water resistant, it has a lightweight handle, lightweight shaft, a wood handle. But what it really comes down to is that it keeps you dry in the rain. That's the benefit. That's the whole point. Below it, we've got a picture of the iPod, if you can remember back. When the iPod came out, very famously, Steve Jobs, instead of saying it has storage of a gigabyte, it plays these types of files, instead he held up the iPod and he said 1,000 songs in your pocket. So he really described it in terms of the benefits, what the consumer was getting out of it, what really they wanted. And as it says, features tell, benefits sell. So describing in terms of those benefits is key. Next, we're going to look at the mission and vision statements. These are important statements which tell about the overall direction of the company. The difference between the vision and the mission can be a little bit difficult to see, but we're going to go over it and go over a few examples. So the mission is what you do, while the vision is what you want to become or what you want to accomplish. The vision is really talking on more of a day-to-day, while the vision is looking further into the future. And here we're going to see a few examples of that. So here we've got a few different mission and vision statements from a couple of well-known companies, IKEA and Tesla, and then just a couple of examples that I created for small businesses, because obviously your vision statement and mission statement, they're going to look a little bit different from that of a big multinational. But to get a good idea, I think these are useful examples. So first we look at IKEA. The mission statement is offer a wide range of well-designed, functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. That really speaks to kind of the day-to-day operations, what they're doing in the moment, where the vision, which is looking into the future and what they want to accomplish maybe long-term, says the vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. The vision, because it's looking long-term, can be more general and allow them sort of a wider range of ways of moving forward towards that goal. Next, we look at Tesla. The mission statement to create the most compelling car company of the 21st century by driving the world's transition to electric vehicles. That's specific. It's what they're doing now. It's what they're accomplishing on a day-to-day. Where the vision statement, looking more long-term, says to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. You can see the difference between those statements. One's more in the now, one's looking to the future, and one's more specific as the mission statement, one's broader in the vision. Next, there's a couple of examples that I have here that I've just made up myself. First is for a restaurant to serve great food at an affordable price in a space that feels like home. So that's the mission statement for my fictional restaurant, where the vision is to become a community partner and a safe space where everybody feels welcome. The key there is to become. This is something that they're doing in the future that they're moving forward to. Also, I've got an example for a contractor to provide quality home building and renovation services. Very simple. It's what they do on the day-to-day. Where the vision, what they want to become, what they want to do longer term, be recognized as a leader in home building services with locations in every major city. So it speaks to the future of the business. Next, we have an exercise. Take a moment, pause the video, and write a mission and vision statement for your own business. Remember, the mission is what you do, and the vision is what you want to become or accomplish. If you're having difficulty with this, I also say you can move back to the previous slide, and often those examples help to give you an idea of what should go into your own statement. The next section is the progress and status section. This is where you differentiate yourself from someone who just has an idea. This is where you're going to show all that work that you've already done, that you've already put into the business, that developing it. So this could involve research, registering the business name, or getting a business license, any connections you've made with suppliers or partnering companies. Maybe you're inventing a product and you've developed a prototype. There's lots of different things that you could do towards getting the business ready for launch. What you're really stressing here is look at all the work that I've done getting this business ready for the funding stage. You really want to show here that you've done everything that you can without funding before you're giving the business plan to a lender, so that they know when they provide you, when they cut that check, when they provide you funding for your business, you're ready to go. You're ready for that next stage. From there, we go to the goals section. So I think of this as a direct progression from the progress section before it. So when I think of the whole process, it goes from you had an idea about the business and a while back, and everything from then to now, all that work that you've done, that goes into the progress section. Now, everything from this point on that you need to do to open up that business and then to grow that business into the future, those are goals for your business. You're going to have goals. You can break them up to a few different time frames. I think it's useful to look at goals in terms of short term, which is goals that you're doing from now until the business opens. Medium-term goals, which are going to be for about, say, the next 2 years, to the development, to the growth of the development and growth of the business. And finally, long-term goals. These are kind of like your vision statement. These are more aspirational, giving direction to the business overall. Remember that there should be goals in every aspect of the business. So marketing and sales, operations, financial goals. We don't just want to see goals about how much you want to sell each year. That's still a totally useful goal, but it doesn't cover the whole breadth of the business. So there should be goals in each of those sections. And finally, if you see the picture on the right here, SMART goals, it's an acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Each of your goals should fulfill and have each of these characteristics. And the two that I always stress are measurable and time-based. Very often I see goals that don't include these, and then it's very difficult to say, has it been accomplished or is it being accomplished? If you have a goal that says, oh, I want to increase the amount of sales that I'm doing, doesn't really tell us by how much you want to do it in what time frame. Rather, if you say, I want to increase sales by 25%, great. That's a lot more useful because it's got that measurable aspect. Now, do you want to do that next year or in 5 years from now? Not quite clear. So a SMART goal would say, increase sales from this year to next year by 25% month over month. It's very clear, it's measurable, it's got a time horizon on it. So you're able to say, has it been accomplished or am I on the path to accomplish it? All of these goals can be changed in the future when you find some of them are relevant or some of them are irrelevant. Maybe you set targets that were unattainable, or you set targets that were just too easy. You're going to learn as the business progresses, but it's really helpful to right now get these goals down to provide that guide for you moving forward in what you need to do to get the business open and developed. So the next section we're going to look at is the market research section. This is everything outside of the business. So it's the environment that the business is operating in, your customers and your competitors. So the first thing that you're going to do is describe the market that you're operating in. You're also, as you do that, going to want to show that there's an opportunity for your business there. As I said, there's 3 sections in here, which is about the industry and the trends of the market you're operating in, the target market, which is your customer base, and finally your competitors, those who your customers are deciding between. We've got lots of different resources as well at Small Business BC that can help with this section that sometimes people find a bit difficult. Here we've got a picture of Mark. He's our market research specialist here. He also provides some webinars and that are very helpful in understanding this topic. So industry and trends. Here you really want to describe how the industry functions. Some industries are very simple and easy to understand. Others are more complicated, and there's lots of different players involved. You can explain how the industry works, what partners or what other businesses are involved there, to give an overview of how it all works. Next, you're going to look at the trends, what's changing within the business. COVID-19 was a big factor. It made things change a lot in just a couple of years span. And even now we're still feeling the effects of that as business is coming back, or it may have a lasting change from the changes that we went through in that period. So you want to describe, is the industry growing? Where is it growing and how fast? The more specific data that you can include here, the better. So if you're in the restaurant industry, you can talk about what's happening with restaurants Canada-wide, but it's more useful if you're able to talk about your type of restaurant in the area or the geographic area that you're working. The more specific, the closer it is to what you're doing, the more useful that information will be. And finally, a lot of this information will be found on the internet as you're researching different articles, maybe different market research documents. What you're not going to want to do is cut and paste off the internet. Make sure, find sources for this information, because you need to show that the information came from a reputable source and it's not just your opinion. But then you're going to write it in your own words and show how it's relevant to your business. The next section is the target market. Target market is so important to the business as it determines so many other aspects of how you operate. It allows you to target advertising. It might help you to change your sales process or the products or services you provide. So, and allowing you, to customize the products to fit the needs of those customers. So how do you describe the target market? First, it's either B2B, which is business to business, or B2C, business to consumer. These are 2 different models for businesses. Sometimes you're even going to sell to both. For example, I met with a client who is opening up a food store. They're going to sell both to the public and also wholesale to other to restaurants or other food stores. So you could have both aspects. very commonly, businesses will have multiple target markets. Next, you're going to describe your target market in terms of demographic info. This is things like age, gender, ethnicity, income level, marital status, all of those things that we kind of refer to as census data, those sort of factual points about your target market. Thinking about the thing that your target market has in common. So you might say, oh, I'm going to sell to men and women. Okay, well, that's not an important one. But if your target market is mostly people between 25 and 35, that's something specific to most of your clients, then that's great. That'll be something that you include in that demographic info. Next, we look at psychographics. This is the likes and dislikes, habits and hobbies of your target market. As I said earlier, you might have multiple target markets. For example, if you're a jewelry retailer, say you're selling jewelry online, most of the time you're going to be selling to women who are buying jewelry for themselves. Say our target market could be middle-aged women who have an income above $60,000 and live within Metro Vancouver, as an example. But come Valentine's Day and Christmas, your target market's probably going to switch. Then you might say, oh, it's going to be middle-aged men who are married to women who fit this description. And that's where the majority of your purchases are going to come from. So it's a very clear example of how there's two target markets. And why you separate them out is when there's going to be different products that you're selling to them, when there's different messaging that you use in your advertising, or even different avenues of advertising of how you're going to get that message to them. It really helps to think about these as two different groups that you're going to approach differently and talk to differently. And one thing that you want to avoid doing as you're working through this is you don't want to define your target market as people who need or people who want my product. Though it's probably true, it doesn't really help you with learning about who these people are. And really this activity is to help you understand who they are so that you're able to tailor your business, you're able to target your marketing to these specific groups. And saying, oh, it's people who want my product doesn't help you to accomplish any of that. So here we're going to take an opportunity for you to describe your target market. So take 5 minutes, pause the video, and describe your target market in terms of the ideas that we have above on this slide. If it's a B2B business or a B2C business, and you could even have multiple target markets and describe both, but work at least right now to get one target market down, and that'll help you as you're writing the business plan later. Next, in the market research section, we look at your competitors. This is the final part of the external environment that's very important to look at for your business. So you can learn a lot by analyzing your competitors. It's really a cheap way to find out about what works and what doesn't work in your industry. So first thing to do is identify who your competitors are and who is your most direct competition. For example, if I'm opening a high-end French restaurant, my competitors aren't going to be all other restaurants. The McDonald's down the street isn't a competitor for me. It's going to be those other restaurants that when somebody's deciding to go out for dinner, they're going to say, do I want to go to this restaurant? Do I want to go to John's French restaurant? Or do we want to go to these other places? So those other places, probably other high-end restaurants that are in your area, those are going to be your direct competitors. So for this section, you're going to take those direct competitors, and for each one separately, you're going to describe their business. Then you're going to go through their strengths and their weaknesses. The strengths are things that you can learn from these businesses. These are aspects that you might be able to include in your own business. For example, If the restaurant down the street has a very successful marketing campaign over Instagram, that's something that you can emulate, something that you could use in your business. On the other hand, these strengths also might be areas that I don't want to compete in. So if the business down the street has an amazing pasta dish, that's what they're known for. They're the most famous restaurant in Vancouver for their pasta, probably means that's not something I want to do in my restaurant that's nearby. I want to pick something else that they're not doing, a gap in their business, or maybe something that is a bit of a weakness for them. So speaking of the weaknesses, these are things we want to avoid. Things that they're doing poorly in their business might be things that don't work for businesses in this industry. And so I don't want to do that. Or by identifying these weaknesses and these gaps in their business, these might be areas that I want to compete. These gaps that are left by the competitors, they're going to lead to your competitive advantage, which we're going to look at next. So the competitive advantage, also known as a unique selling proposition, this is going to be where you talk about what you do that the customer wants, that the competitor can't do or doesn't do. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. It might be that you're just providing something that isn't available in the same geographic area, let's say, simple as that. So I'm opening up a restaurant. It's going to be the only Thai restaurant in Port Coquitlam. Then that's my value proposition. That's my competitive advantage, that I'm the only one providing this service in this area. Now, where this can get tricky for some businesses is if they provide a service that's very similar to the competitors. So for example, a trucking company, a lot of trucks that you see on the road are going to be owner operated. That means the person who owns the truck is the one that's driving it, and they take shipments for other companies from place to place. So you'll say, well, what's your competitive advantage with a trucking company? You're doing the same thing as everybody else. So does that mean it's a bad business to get into? And that's not the case at all. At least in my understanding right now, is trucking companies are very much needed. And the reason is because there's more demand than there is supply. So with the example of a trucking company, even though you're not doing something different from your competitors, your competitive advantage at this point is that you're available, that there's a demand for it and there's no one to fill that demand. So that means that even though it's not something so different, it is different in that you have availability and you're able to enter the industry and fulfill some of that demand. So next, we're going to look at the marketing and sales section. This is going to be about everything you do to encourage sales in your business. And this is a section that's going to vary heavily between businesses. The first part of this is the SWOT analysis. The SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses, these are going to be internal to the business, where opportunities and threats are external. It's important to remember that the word strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats have a very specific meaning within a SWOT analysis. So when we look through them, the one that often trips people up is opportunities. And just keep in mind when you're talking about opportunities is that these are external to the business. So these aren't things you're doing. These are opportunities that are provided by the market. And so the opportunities and threats, this is going to harken back to very heavily to that market research section and what's happening in the market. So it's all about things external to the business. Next is the distribution. So how does the customer get your product or service? Is it easy for them? This sounds very simple, and often it is, but you really want to make sure that it's very easy for the client where they learn about your product to be able to order your product or get their hands on your product without any difficulties in that process. Next is the pricing strategy. And the key to this is the strategy. So how do you decide the price to your business? There's a few different models that are frequently used. The first one is called cost plus. So using a cost plus model, you're going to figure out all the costs that go into producing, say, the product that you're providing, and maybe all the man hours, all the materials, things like that. Add those together and then add a percentage onto that. And that's going to be cost plus. The next is competitors' pricing. So for a lot of businesses, you don't really have a lot of say in what the pricing is in your industry because there's so many competitors out there. If I'm starting a business as a, say, physiotherapist, I can look online and see, hey, the prices for an hour of physiotherapy range between $90 and $140, let's say. So it's going to be very much based off of what the range of prices that exist already are on how I'm going to price myself. And so you have a bit of a say within that range. If you want to be a premium service, that's going to charge higher, or if you're going to be a more value-based service, which charge lower. But outside of that range, it's going to be very difficult to operate. And finally, there's a value-based pricing model. So with a value-based pricing model, this is usually for new products, something new to the market, and so you don't have a competition to look at. At the same time, if you're producing, say, this new product, and it only costs you $5 to produce, but it's really handy and people would pay $100 to have it, it doesn't really make sense to use a cost plus model where you would say, oh, it costs $5 and I'm going to add 50% to that and charge $7.50. Well, if you're charging only $7.50, but people would be willing to pay $100 for it, that's probably not a good way to price out your product. So we use value-based. You're looking at what the value of this product is to the consumer. And as I said, that's most often used with a new product. Next, we look at the sales process. So this can be represented in a flow chart or a written statement. It's all up to sort of how you like to visualize or understand these things. So some people like the visualization of the flow chart that we have on this slide. Other people, it's a lot more clear to go through point by point, but whatever works best with you. In this, you want to work through the different stages of understanding about your product. So we talk about awareness, which is the first stage in a potential customer learning about your product, all the way to the sales stage. And you want to look for gaps throughout that process. So when they first hear about your product to when they buy your product, and making sure that there's a smooth flow for any customer who moves through that process. So I said you're going to look for any gaps, any bottlenecks that make it difficult for people to move on towards the purchasing stage. For example, I was working with one client who was providing services to newcomers to Canada or to people who wanted to immigrate to Canada. And what they were doing is they were putting up blog posts on certain websites that were providing information about things you needed to know about moving to the country. Now, when I asked them with these blog posts, how do they find their way to your website, or how they hire you to provide services for them, and how this blog was set up or the website that they were using, they said, oh, there's not really a way for them to do that. I can't really post my credentials here, or I can't link to anything. So there's a huge bottleneck. To go from finding out about her and about the business that she had, there's no way for them to go from there to actually hiring her or getting to her website. And so even though there was some marketing going on there, there's no way for the client to move forward through that process and get to a point where they would be purchasing services. Next, we look at promotion and advertising. So there's a number of steps to communication that I have alluded to just before. And these are These steps are awareness, how they first hear about you, evaluation, which is once they know about you, deciding if your business or your services are right for them. Next is purchasing, which is getting and paying for the product. And finally, after sale. So after they've purchased, to encourage them to come back or to follow up with them and see how they like the services. There are many ways of doing advertising, and some are better for certain levels of communication. For example, many clients I work with say, oh, people are going to hear about me through my website. But unless you're doing a lot of SEO and a lot of search engine optimization, it's going to be difficult for people to find your website, especially for a small business. So the website isn't often a great place for that awareness stage, but rather for the evaluation stage of the business. When they want to learn more, once they've heard about the business, they search up the website, they can read through, find out lots of information, and really evaluate if your business and the products that you provide are right for them. So choosing the type of advertising that you want to do, it's going to be about how you, what stage of communication you're at, who your target customer is, and finally, what you're communicating to them. So starting with who your target customer is, this can decide the other methods, the method of communication, what type of social media, or is it going to be traditional media, how you're going to reach them. And then finally, that unique selling proposition or competitive advantage that we talked about before, this is going to be a large part about what you're communicating to your target customers through this advertising, because you really want to show, hey, here's the reason why you should purchase from me. Here's what makes my product or service unique and attractive to you. In the next section, we look at the management and the team that you're going to have. So describe all the people that you're going to be working with on the business. What are their position and what are the roles and responsibilities of those positions? And how many people are you going to have in each role? Once you've done that and you've gone through, look for gaps. Look for things that aren't being fulfilled in the business and maybe divvy out those responsibilities or create a new role to fill those gaps. Remember, as you do this, responsibilities should be specific and unique. So, for example, if everyone in your business is going to be responsible for doing the social media, the result is going to be nobody does the social media. So when you do have responsibilities that are kind of shared, for example, maybe a few different managers, depending on the day, are going to be responsible for locking up the store. Just make sure that that responsibility is only one person's responsibility at a time. So it's only one person's responsibility each night. Make sure as you're going through this also to say exactly what your role and what you're going to be doing in the business. And if there's other roles that are going to be fulfilled by people external to the business, consultants, if you're going to hire an accountant or bookkeeper, if you're going to have a lawyer work with you, whatever it is, make sure to mention them as well and to say what they're going to be responsible within the business. So here we're going to start with the operations. This is going to be the day-to-day functioning of the business, really the nitty-gritty and how things get made in the business. First section that we're going to look at is the location. So start with the address of the business. Where exactly is it? Then you can describe the space. If I'm looking at a restaurant, I'm going to say, how many seats are there? What type of decoration? How big is it? What's the square footage? And also include the surrounding areas. So is it in a busy area? Is there foot traffic? What kind of parking is available? So with the example of a restaurant, I can describe it as the space is at this location. It has 1,200 square feet. It's got seating for 25 patrons. It's at street level along a major avenue. It's near office buildings so that there's lots of lunchtime traffic, lots of foot traffic pass it by, but there is limited street parking. There's not a lot of parking available. But because there's limited there is considerable foot traffic, there's still lots of people that are available to patronize the restaurant. If you're a contractor, maybe you're working in a lot of different areas. It might be that you describe the office or the shop that you work out of, but you're also going to talk about the fact that work is done on the job site, say throughout Metro Vancouver as an example. You can talk about where the work is done as part of the location as well. The next section to consider is the equipment. So what do you need to operate the business? A really good way to start thinking about this is in terms of the minimum viable product, the MVP of your business. So sure, for this business, it would be great to have every possible tool that could be useful to you, but what do you really need to get this business going? So start by describing the most important things that you need to get that business operational. That's a good way to frame this and a good way to think about pretty much everything in the business plan is what are those needs. So for each of these most important and most costly items, describe what it does and say what it's going to cost. For example, if I'm a graphic designer, I might talk about the expensive computer that I need to be able to run certain software, and that software that I need to purchase as well. That could be the equipment that I need for my business. If it's a restaurant, I might talk about the type of cookers, the type of washing machines, all of those things that are necessary within the kitchen for the business to run. Next, we look at the systems. This is how you keep track of everything. Could be how you keep track of your customers, your invoices, your finances, your inventory. What's important here is that you have a system. You might be using software specific for it. You might use Excel. You might even have a paper system if you're old school. What's important is that you have a system that works for you and you're able to keep track of these things. So explain what systems you have, what you use, and how you use it. I worked with a contractor who was a fabricator, and they had a very robust Excel system. So they had an Excel page with all these different contacts. They had different color coding systems for how important that client was when they last worked with them, maybe what part of the industry they were in, the client's names when they did the last jobs. It was very, very elaborate, and it worked for this person very well. So there was no need for them to go out and purchase some software that would do the same thing. What's important is that you have the systems work for you. It's not about like which system you're using. Next, we're looking at the regulations and the training requirements. So what I'm going to share with you is a website called BC BizPal. And BC BizPal is sort of a one-stop shop for learning about what the requirements for your business are. You come here, you're going to type in your location and you're going to search up the industry. This is the last search that I was doing. So it was for specialized food manufacturing, and you're going to click search. And this is going to show you every possible regulation that's going to apply to your business. So if we see here, we've got 66 possible activities, but as you look through, you're going to notice that a lot of them are not going to apply to you and your business. So here you're able to click through different categories. And once you've looked through this, it's a very exhaustive list. So you'll be able to find everything that applies to you and your business. So bcbizpal.ca. If you search BizPal, BC BizPal, you'll be able to find that. We're not going to go through it much further because there is a lot here, but I encourage you to go there for your industry and start reading up. It's nice to be able to go to one place to find all of these regulations that might apply to you. Finally, we're going to look at suppliers and inventory. So who are the suppliers to your business? Where are they? Where are they located? And what do they supply you with? So for many businesses, you're very reliant on getting supplies. It's going to be very important to have multiple suppliers for each thing. You don't want to be caught out not getting some crucial supplies for your business and either having to wait or providing a service or product that's lacking. Finally, there's the production process. So this is the process from when you make a sale to when you say deliver the goods or services. For example, with a contractor, painting contractor, my painting Shine Painters company from before, the production process might start with the client reaching out for a quote, providing that quote. Once they accept and sign the contract, you start painting. There might be payment at a midpoint if it's a larger contract, so paying halfway through it, then finishing up the work. The general contractor or the client comes and checks the work. There might be touch-ups, followed by the final payment. So there's the process of what you go through. For other businesses that are providing a physical product, building a physical product, you can talk about the process of actually building that, of actually making that. Next, we're going to look at the financial section. So this is where you show the financial implications of all the decisions that have been described in the business plan. There's a section in the business plan that says financials, and this is going to lend itself to explaining what we see in the actual cash flow documents that are going to accompany every business plan. So we're going to go through the cash flow template. We're going to see the startup cost section, the sales forecast section, and the cash flow pages, and go through those together with a bit of an example to show you how you can start writing your own cash flow. So here we're looking at the cash flow template. This is a blank template, and I'm going to go through how you're going to populate it. So the first thing that you're going to notice is across the bottom here that there's lots and lots of tabs. So it keeps going and going. The reason for that is some lenders like to see things done with different scenarios. So rather than just having a sales forecast, which maps out the expected sales of your business, they want to have a sales forecast and then a conservative forecast and an optimistic forecast. So a lot of the stuff that we're looking at as we go through this, it'll be about doing it multiple times, but the process will be the same. So what we're going to look at today is just 3 tabs: startup costs here, sales forecast, and cash flow. So I'm going to go through a fictional business. I'm starting an aquarium shop. So I'm going to be selling fish. I'm going to be selling aquariums. I'm going to be selling fish food, things like that, at a retail space. And we're going to run through that scenario together. So the first thing that I want to do is start on this startup cost page. So this is where I go through all of the startup costs, the inventory, supplies, the building renovation, things that go into setting up my business. So what I'm going to do first is identify cost items here, or even fill ones into blank spaces that are going to be for starting my business. So I already said it's going to have a retail space. So I'm going to be paying rent. I'm going to have to pay first and last month's rent. So here I'm going to put in, let's say, $3,000. I put that amount in first under cost of item. And when I hit enter, you're going to see on the right here, there's this under totals and checks, it goes red. And that's because this $3,000 now has to be attributed either to owner contribution or loan request, Or if there's also money coming from another source, it could go there. But I'm going to say, or it could be a combination of both. So I'm going to say $1,000 is going to come from my contribution, and $2,000 of that is going to come from the loan. I hit enter. Everything balances out. I've put this cost in these columns, and now it's gray again. So it shows that everything's working correctly. Let's say I'm also going to have renovations done to the space, and that's going to cost $10,000 for all of those renovations. Maybe I'm going to put that totally under the loan request. Again, I hit enter. Everything's balanced, so it shows up correctly. Next, I'm going to look in the next section. Maybe I'm going to have insurance I need to purchase. There might be other equipment, computer equipment, things like that that I'll need. Finally, in inventory and supplies, I'm of course selling fish. I'm selling aquariums. I'm going to sell other things as well. So there's going to be inventory and supplies that I need also to sell. So I'm going to jump forward to the next version of this and show you what that next step looks like. So here we have the next version. We've got all of the costs filled in. So it's a little bit different from what I showed you, but the costs are the same. So we've got first and last month's rent, the building supplies. I also said I also needed insurance for the year, and I'm going to be paying that up front in this example. So that comes in this section. I'm also going to need a computer and some other machines. So that's going to cost a couple $1,000s. And finally, I'm of course going to need inventory. So I'm going to need tropical fish, aquariums, and food and supplies. So all of that is filled in there, and everything is made to balance. So everything on this side is gray. The next step that I'm going to go into is moving into the sales forecast tab. So in this section, you can see I've already started filling out what my products and services are. So it's going to look like this: product service 1, product service 2, product service 3. I've already put fish in there. So I think my next one is going to be aquariums. And maybe it was fish food or equipment. Stuff like that. So what I'm going to go through is I'm going to be setting prices for each of these and estimating the number that I sell in any given month. Now, with any business, you're very often going to have more than 5 products or services, but for simplicity and to save space, we include 5 services on the 5 products or services on the template. So even though I might be selling 100 different types of fish, I'm going to make an average in the price of those fish so that I'm just going to put it under one column. So let's say I'm selling fish. Some of them might cost $50. Some of them only cost $1. But on average, I'll say a fish sells for about $12. And then I'm going to make this amount the same all the way across because I'm planning to sell every fish for that same amount over time. Now I'm going to start estimating sales. So I say in my first month, maybe I'm going to sell 150 fish. Now, as I estimate out my sales, there's going to be a few considerations that I have here. First, it's going to be over time, my business is hopefully going to get more notoriety. People are going to learn about it, and that'll help increase my sales. The other thing is going to be seasonality. There's going to be certain times of year for most businesses where you sell more or you sell less. For example, in the fish industry, in the aquarium fish industry, when people are spending more time inside, that's when people are spending more money and buying more fish and buying more aquariums. So I find that throughout the summer months, when people are outside, the weather's a lot nicer, my business decreases. And as it moves into the winter months, my sales increase. So first, they're going to start increasing over time. So in the next month, I'm going to have, say, 180. Then it might plateau because it's entering the summer. And it might even decrease for July and August, or June and July. So you can understand what this process looks like. And you also see that when I fill out the number sold and the price, it automatically calculates. So within this template, all of those spaces that are filled in gray are going to be ones that are automatically put in for you. And all the places in white are places where you can put in information. So as we go through, I'm going to again jump forward into the page so we can see what it looks like when it's filled out without you having to sit here and watch me fill it all out piece by piece. See, here we have the sales forecast all filled out. So we've got fish, aquarium, and then food and supplies. Each one has a different price and number of fish sold. So the numbers change a little bit here, but you get the right idea. So as we go through, we also see that for each given month at the bottom, it totals the amount of sales. So now when we go to the next stage, which is the cash flow tab, we're going to see some of that information is already in here. So first, this information here, which is the owner's investment and the loan amount, that's going to be from the startup cost page. So we go back to the startup cost down to the bottom. We've got $37,000 for the loan amount, $20,000 for the owner investment. And that's the same as on our cash flow tab here. We also see the revenues across the top here. And so 5,740, if we go back to the sales forecast tab, along the bottom here, these are also those same numbers. So it's automatically putting it over there for you. But what we have to do here is start filling out the costs associated. So the first thing we need to do is for the cost of items that we sell. Here we've got the cost of goods sold section. This is very useful for certain businesses. For other businesses, it won't work for. So for example, if you have a business that like a restaurant who that purchases your ingredients sort of in the same month that you're selling them. You buy things, you cook them, then you sell them immediately thereafter. This can be very useful. So what it does is puts in a percentage, let's say 40%, and then it automatically calculates the cost of those goods to me. So if I spent $5,740, I'm going to spend almost $2,300 on that inventory. So for this business, we can say that's a useful way of doing it, where I've got an initial inventory, and then when I sell anything, I'm going to repurchase it so I can keep the inventory at the store pretty consistent. Where this isn't going to work very well, using this cost of goods sold part, is if I do large purchases, say I'm importing goods from overseas and I'm only importing things twice a year, and then I'm selling them throughout the year. Because if that's the case, I'm not purchasing a small amount every month like this. And this would be quite inaccurate for when the actual purchases are happening. So in that case, we would do things a little bit differently. But for here, I'm assuming that every time I sell stuff, I'm going to make purchases, and the cost of the items that I'm selling, the cost to me is about 40% of the price that I sell them for. Next, we're going to look through the costs that are here. So of course, there's going to be rent. And you're going to start putting these costs in under month 1. So for rent, we said that was $1,500. And that's going to be something that occurs every month. So I'm going to be able to drag that across. Or I'm going to try to. So it shows up every month there. We might also have credit card fees, so charges that we have to pay for people using the credit card in the store. That's normally about 2% of sales. We might also have an accounting firm that we use for our business. We might have employees that we need to pay month in and month out for working there. Here are all the categories that are often appearing, but no one, when they're using this, is going to be using every single one of these categories. And then there's also spaces to add in things that aren't here that are going to be specific to your business. So don't be afraid if something doesn't apply to you, but this is a good guide to remind you of a lot of expenses that are typical to many businesses. So finally, I'm going to jump forward once more. And I'm going to show you what that looks like when it's been filled out. So here you can see the cash flow page, and it's been totally filled out. We've got an owner's draw. So this is the amount of money that the owner is going to be taking out of the business. We can also see an employee's salary. That's going to increase over time as the business gets busier, moving into the colder months. And I start needing more help. We're paying utilities. We've got some bank account fees. There's, of course, rent for the business, point of sale rental, telephone and internet. And I've also put in an equation for credit card fees. Lastly, what needs to be added in is the loan payment. So as we mentioned earlier, according to those startup costs, I was requesting a loan. And so I'm going to have to calculate how much money that loan is. Best way to do this, what I always do, is Google loan repayment calculator. You need to know the length of the loan, the term. You need to know the interest and how frequently those payments are coming out. The last thing we want to do is we look at the bottom line here. It's all about the bottom line. So what we notice, this line is called cumulative cash flow. This is basically how much money the business has in the bank at the end of any month. And what it says here is this number must be positive. You can't have a negative amount of money. That's not possible. That just means that the business has ended and it can't go forward. If you can't pay your rent or you can't pay your staff, that's sort of the end of the game. That's the end of the line for this business. And we notice that there's lots of negative numbers through this first section. So here it starts going negative immediately. It dips down for a while before it comes back up and goes into the positives. And you're going to say, well, many businesses lose a bit of money at the beginning before they sort of become more popular, before clients hear about them more. So it's very common that there's going to be losses. And that's why we need to add in working capital. This is money that the business can use for operations. That's going to go on the first page. It's going to go in the startup cost page because it's money that needs to come into the business at the beginning. But unlike other costs that are there, this is going to be money that stays in the business to be used for operations. So we're going to look back at startup costs, the tab we started with, and we're going to remember all of these costs that we added in already. The assumption with the money here is that it was given to the business and the business spent it before it started operating. So all of this money is gone. So the money for the first and last month's rent, for the building renovations, for the inventory, all of that money is gone. But there's this last section down below, additional cash and working capital needs. And this is where we can add in that money for the operation of the business. So I'm going to add in $13,000 here. And I'm going to make that part of the loan. And I'm also going to make an owner contribution, say $2,000 to round things off. And that's going to go here under owner contribution. And what we're going to notice now is that this $15,000 from working capital, it's going to exist in the business when we go to the cash flow. So in the bottom line, we're going to start off with $15,000 in the bank, you could say. Now, when we look at things, sure, we lose money a little bit at the beginning because our expenses are greater than our revenues, but we never dip so low as to go into the negatives. And then we start coming back up into positive numbers. And that's what we want to see in the end. And because we put that $15,000 when it does dip down, hey, the lowest point we get to is still $8,000 in the bank. Now, although it says in their cumulative cash flow that it must be positive, I would go further than that. And I would say you need to have at least 1 month of total expenses. So this line available at any given time. Better to have 2 months, maybe even 3 months, but minimum 1 month. So when we look, we find the lowest year here, or lowest month, where I've got only $8,000 in the business, $8,083, but that's more than 1 month's total expenses for the next month. So I'm going to be okay. You're going to continue doing this on the page. You're also going to see that it's for 2 years. So there's another year beside that you're also going to fill out. But this example hopefully gave you enough of a head start so you can understand what goes into the cash flows template and start filling it out for your own business. Now, the benefit of all of this is you get to play through. You can use different scenarios. You can change different costs, different revenues, and really see the impact to the bottom line without having to experience all of those fluctuations in real life. So finally, we're going to look at what makes a good business plan. And there's a few different characteristics of a good plan that I'd like to share with you. First is consistency. The business plan has to tell the same story throughout. So the business plan and the cash flow need to be talking about the same things. An example of this is often I'll see a business plan and they'll talk about in the marketing section, oh, I'm going to use Google Ads to advertise the business. Then I go to the cash flow, look under the advertising, and we don't see any money put towards Google Ads. So which is it? It doesn't talk about the same story. So it needs to be consistent and it needs to be clear throughout that it gives you this one consistent picture of what the business is going to be doing. You can often find that same breakdown between the executive summary and the body of the plan. And so make sure the executive summary, the body of the business plan, and the cash flow are all telling that same story. Next is themes. Themes are going to be the things that are most important, or those characteristics that are most important about the business, and they're going to appear throughout the plan. An example of this is if I'm starting a restaurant and it's going to be an organic food restaurant. That idea of organic food is going to be a key theme within my business plan. And though each section of the business plan and cash flow are going to be talking about different aspects, that idea of organic food is going to appear over and over as a theme. So for example, in the business description, of course, I'm going to describe my business as an organic restaurant. Next, when it comes to advertising, of course, it's going to fit in there. In my unique selling proposition, I'm going to talk about the fact that organic food is going to be something that unique that I'm doing. When I talk about my suppliers in the operations section, of course, I'm going to need suppliers that can provide me with organic food. And also in the financials, I might have to say to provide organic food, it's going to cost more. And so that's going to affect the financials of the business. So this one idea of having an organic restaurant is going to kind of ripple out throughout the business. And that same idea is going to appear in many different sections, even though I'm talking about a different aspect each time. Next is clarity. Is the business plan clearly written? One thing that very often happens is that all the terminology, all the acronyms that are used aren't clearly explained. We often call this the curse of knowledge, which is somebody understands their industry, their business so well that it becomes difficult to explain it down to a level that everybody can understand. I often say try to write it so that a 12-year-old will understand everything in the business plan. That way, you know that myself or the lender or any external reader is going to be able to understand everything. And it's going to be nice and clear. And finally, as I mentioned before, the most important part of the business plan, the executive summary. So the whole business plan is certainly important. However, you're going to pay special attention to the executive summary. This is always going to be read first. It's going to provide that first impression to whoever's reading the plan, if that's a lender or if that's somebody within the business or a business partner. So you want to make sure that you're giving that good first impression. Make sure that it's well written and it includes those important themes we talked about before. And of course, do not copy and paste the executive summary by just taking chunks out of the business plan. It needs to summarize everything, needs to summarize those important parts. So it's not going to be the exact same writing. And finally, getting started. So where are you going to start with a business plan? Not at the beginning. You're not going to start at the executive summary. You're going to do this once you've written the body of the plan. Once you've written everything else, then you can come back and write the executive summary. And how are you going to start writing? So first, take that template that we've gone over. Maybe you've looked through it already, but look through that template and start writing the parts that you know. I often describe this as writing it the same way as I was told in my younger days on how I was supposed to write a test. Go through the easy sections first. Get those down. When you get to a part that you don't know or something that you're having difficulty with, don't let it bog you down and stop you from moving forward. Move on to the next section and cycle back to it. It might be that working on the other sections of the plan sort of give you ideas on what to write in those sections that are causing you problems at the beginning. So skip over those sections, come back to them. And as you are writing the plan, make sure that when in doubt, if something should be included, include it. The vast majority of the business plans that I read over are lacking on detail rather than having too much. I'd say out of the 200 business plans that I've read and reviewed with clients, there's been one, maybe two, where I've said, you know what, this is too much detail. And the other 98, 99%, I've probably told you're going to need to add in some more. Then, as you are writing, bounce between sections. This isn't a novel, you don't have to go from the beginning to the end in a straight line. When you're writing about one section, because everything's so intertwined, it might make you think, oh, I should change this about the products or services, or I should add this in. Feel free to bounce back and forth. That's sort of with every part of the plan referencing all other parts. There's going to be changes with the business as you go through this. Writing a business plan is really like an act of discovery. So things are going to change, and feel free to bounce around and go to those sections and make those changes. And finally, don't write the whole thing in one sitting. It's a big undertaking. So give yourself time to work on it properly. Out of the many clients that I've worked with, I don't think I've ever heard, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Everybody said it's much larger undertaking. It's describing the whole business in clear detail. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot goes into it. So give yourself time to do it properly. Don't try to sit down in one go and do it. Get up, walk away, spend time, come back to it, and work through it at a pace that allows you to get all the detail in there without burning yourself out. And finally, a bit of a plug of one of the services that we provide and I provide here at Small Business BC. This is the business plan review service. So once you have a first draft of your business plan that we've hopefully helped you put together now, you can sign up for this service on the website. And what it is it's 3 meetings. At each meeting, you send me the business plan beforehand. I'm able to read through. I make notes on the plan. Then we have a meeting over Zoom, and we look at that business plan together with those notes. And I talk you through sort of what's missing, what gaps are there, what things aren't clear, identifying what needs to be improved with the business plan. And then I provide you with those notes. And of course, we go through the cash flow as well. All of that. Whenever I say business plan, I mean business plan and cash flow. We go through both of those. I provide you with those notes. You get a chance to make revisions, make a next draft. And then since there's 3 meetings, we go through it 3 times with each draft of the business plan. So that's the business plan review service. It's a great next step after you've gone through and written the business plan and you want some feedback and want to see what you need to do to improve. So thanks very much for listening through. I hope you find this very helpful. If you have any questions about business planning, business plan writing, please feel free to reach out. Here you see my contact details. It's always easy to get in touch with me via email, or if you prefer to call, please feel free to reach out. And I look forward to hearing from you and to reading and working with you on your business plans.